Hello and blessings to you. Welcome to another Bible study, and today we're going to be looking at the greatest commandment of all. I know people who say we only follow the 10 commandments mentioned by Messiah, and all others have fallen away. I share with you guys all the time, love is the sacrifice. But here we have a flip of the script where love has removed not only animal sacrifice, but the laws themselves. The church has replaced Israel and also replaced obedience with love. No different than the alphabet community claims love is love. Gender and age has nothing to do with it. Truth is, if they did bind themselves to love makes them complete Torah, they would have failed even at that. Love your enemy or love your neighbor as yourself. If that is where you're going to hang everything, you are betting your life on this love everyone and I'll make it into the new kingdom doctrine the church sells. What good is that doctrine? It goes against Scripture. See, to love everyone as yourself, you have already failed. To even say such a thing shows a lack of respect, and in my opinion, it's mocking the greatest commandment. You're not going to leave yourself walking down the road. You're not going to leave yourself unprotected, hungry, hurt, or in any way discomfort. Yet, the world we live in, we always have these people in our eyesight. Of course, we're not going to stop and give a stranger a ride that's walking in the heat of the day, probably not in the rain nor the snow either, unless we knew them. So binding themselves to this doctrine of loving everyone would be like tying an anchor around your neck and going swimming, or making a vow and not keeping it. Only in this love everyone, you have failed before you even completed the sentence. But when the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence, they gathered together. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him and saying, let me interrupt right here for a moment to set this scene. Here, our Messiah answered so effectively, the crowd went silent. He shut down the Sadducees. It must have been embarrassing. Matter of fact, this is why so many people are hooked on watching YouTube preachers debate each other. They're watching and eagerly awaiting for someone to say something so intelligent the other guy is left speechless. This is what's happened here. The Sadducees, through pride, found themselves with egg on their face. You do realize now the Pharisees gathered together to discuss how to make Yeshua look bad after putting the Sadducees to silence. And the Pharisees thought this was a good opportunity to show the Sadducees up. A Pharisee's lawyer doing what lawyers do, working to trick a man into saying something that they can twist, using the man's own words to destroy him. It's lawyering 101. Ask the same question in different ways in an effort that person might incriminate themselves. Then one of them, which was a Pharisee's lawyer, asked him a question, tempting him and saying, Master, which is the greatest commandment in scripture. Yeshua said to him, "You shall love Yahweh, your Elohim, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment." The witness to what Yeshua said was the entire point of Torah, the animal sacrifices and being brought out of Egypt. "I am Yahweh, your Elohim, which have brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other Elohim before me." Slaughtering an animal brought this point home. But once the lesson is learned, must you keep stealing the animal's life, killing it and destroying it? "The thief cometh not, but for to steal, and to kill, and to destroy. I come, that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly." Many of you have missed the point of sacrifice. "Hear, O Israel, Yahweh, our ruler, is one Elohim. And you shall love Yahweh, your Elohim, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might." Yeshua didn't make a new commandment of love is love. He could have just very well told that Pharisee's lawyer, "It is written." Same thing he told Satan, because he went all the way back to Torah for the answer. Now, here's the deal. This is the first and greatest commandment. It stands on its own above all the other commandments. There is none equal to it. And the second is like unto it, "Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." Here is where the deceit of the church comes into your life. They ignore the second commandment stands on its own as well. It is like the first commandment, but it is not the first commandment. It is like, similar, resembling the first commandment. By the church doctrine, they make the second equal to the first. Basically, the same doctrine and message the special alphabet community preach. Love is love. That's why Deuteronomy 6:4 declares Yahweh is one. That's the first, your first love. You can have many loves after that, but you only get one first love. Attempting to make the second equal to the first is making your heart equal to the Creator's heart. You do know that this is the very same thing that made Hasatan fall in the first earth age, don't you? "Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus, Thus says Yahweh, because thy heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am a Elohim. I sit in the seat of Elohim, in the midst of the seas. But you're just a man, and not a God, though you have set your heart as the heart of Yahweh." This is exactly what many are doing by making the second commandment equal to the first. You yourself have the love of a God, and by having that love, you have somehow completed Torah. No longer bound by any rules given by our Father for his children. They have the love of a God. They are not bound by right rulings of the Hebrew covenant. Now, they wave this next verse around like a hall pass through Torah, never having to stop and enter a classroom. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. We have to have proper context. We have already covered number one and number two are not equal. That's how numbers work. So when we break this down, what Yeshua was saying was what Torah was saying. Love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, mind, and soul. That is the greatest commandment. This is the whole reason you were born into a flesh body. This is the only reason this earth age exists, is so you can learn the greatest commandment of all. Unlike Adam and Eve, we have the knowledge of good and evil. You should know to love your Father enough to follow his right rulings for you. That's what Yeshua was teaching. And this is driven home with the second commandment, which isn't listed as one of the 10. This is the same thing Yeshua presented, and many church people use this again, as I have pointed out, same as the alphabet community use it. Love is love. They preach the same message as if that completes all the commandments. But love your neighbor as yourself is nothing more than on these two commandments hang all the Torah and the prophets. See, if you love Yahweh with all your heart, mind, and soul, you would follow Torah and the teaching of the prophets. And you know what happens when you do this? You'll love your neighbor as yourself. That's why it all hangs on those two commandments. What I am presenting to you here now is the context that complements the scripture. Also, you have to understand, when Yeshua was saying your neighbor, this is recorded in the Greek, and of course, Christians make this to mean anyone and everyone. This is why I say they have failed the commandment they wave around so proudly before they ever start trying to practice it. You're going to let yourself be in need of anything if you can help it, yet you pass many people in need around you every day. I'm not talking about giving money. I mean seeing a need and fulfilling it. Yeshua came only for the Hebrews. He spoke and taught only the Hebrews. That's why Gentiles must cross over and become Hebrews. This is how the second commandment had meaning for the Hebrews that wouldn't even eat at the same table with any other nation. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy fellow man. According to the Jews, fellow man is any member of the Hebrew nation following the covenant of the Hebrews. The church has built an entire doctrine around this second commandment, not even listed in the 10 Commandments. And that's the stumble of the pew sitter. We only follow the 10 Commandments. The church says, unless it was recorded as Messiah saying it, that it no longer applies. But use common sense and logic. Our Messiah told you he only came for the lost sheep of Israel. He taught in the synagogues. What do you think he was teaching? There was not yet a renewed covenant with Yeshua's blood. But why would the entire Torah need to be repeated and recorded in the Greek to the Hebrews who had already been studying Torah pretty much since the day they were born? Now, people can accept, deny, or correct the context I have brought here today. It is my prayer to be used in his service that opens eyes. If what I have shared has you accepting the true context, you have been touched by Yah, as He is the only one that opens your mind to wisdom and understanding. People could deny what I'm sharing by closing their eyes and ignoring it. And of course, folks can correct the context if they feel I have twisted something to cause stumble. But look, you need to be honest with yourself. You don't love everyone like you do yourself. The best you can do is love family with repeated forgiveness. That's your tribe, not a stranger. A neighbor is not a brother or sister unless you live in an encampment of the Hebrew tribes. It's your family is what Yeshua is showing us, the body of Messiah, not an excuse to free yourself from the covenant and still make it into the new kingdom. Prayerfully, you found this video helpful in your walk. Shalom.